Hello and welcome to VOP Business. I am Kayla Abraham. On the show today, we'll be turning our spotlight on the most important issues in the economy. Let's begin at the Apex Bank. The Central Bank of Nigeria has threatened to penalize shipping companies exporting undocumented cargoes from the country. Godwin Emefiele, CBN governor, spoke at the RT200 Non-Oil Export Summit 2023 on Tuesday in Abuja. The summit is themed RT200 Challenges and Prospects. Emefiele said that the development of the non-oil export sector is crucial given that it holds vast potential for generating a significant amount of foreign exchange earnings. He said that CBN regularly monitors and appeals to exporters to document their exports and repatriate proceeds so they can be utilized optimally for the benefit of the country's economy. But he said the Apex Bank was aware that some people try as much as possible to sidetrack the process by attempting to export their cargo without documentation. Speaking on the success of the RT200, the CBN governor said earnings from non-oil exports increased by 40% from $3 billion in 2021 to $5.6 billion at the end of 2022. The RT200 FX program was introduced to stimulate non-oil exports with a $200 billion FX income target in the next 3 to 5 years. In another development, the governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, revealed on Tuesday that in 2021, the President, General Muhammadu Buhari, agreed that it was senseless to be spending trillions of naira as subsidy on petrol but refused to stop it. El-Rufai said all 36 state governors, the National Economic Council, and the President agreed at the time that the subsidy regime was detrimental to the economy of Nigeria, but Buhari refused to stop the subsidy regime. This came as a former governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, Lamido Sanusi, also described the fuel subsidy regime as stupidity, stressing that Nigeria was heading towards bankruptcy as a result of it. He said if the incoming government of Bola Tinubu should continue with the fuel subsidy regime, then the administration would be seen as an unserious one. El-Rufai and Sanusi spoke during a policy conversation and book presentation organized by Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and Agora Policy in Abuja. The earnings of the oil majors from the crude oil activities in the first quarter of the year hit over $47.9 billion. This is a development that accounts for a decrease compared with the fourth quarter of 2022. The oil majors' earnings dipped by 4.6% from $50.2 billion in the fourth quarter of 2022 to $47.9 billion in the first quarter of 2023. However, the earnings made in the first quarter of 2023 grew by 262.9% to supersede the $13.2 billion recorded in the same quarter of 2022. This is on top of the $20.4 billion loss recorded by BP in first quarter 2022. Data gleaned from the oil majors' quarterly reports showed that ExxonMobil and Shell plc earned the most in the first quarter of 2023 with $11.4 billion and $9.6 billion respectively, while Eni recorded the lowest with $5.16 billion. Darren Woods, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of ExxonMobil, said the hard work of the company to execute its strategic priorities delivered a record first quarter following a record year. ExxonMobil's first quarter 2023 earnings were $11.4 billion compared with $12.8 billion in the fourth quarter of 2022. The company said, excluding the identified item associated with additional European taxes on the energy sector, earnings were $11.6 billion compared to $14 billion in the prior quarter. According to a statement by Shell, it's recording in the first quarter of 2023 adjusted earnings of $9.6 billion with adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization of $21.4 billion with improved operational performance, lower underlying OPEX, and better results in chemicals and products driven by trading and optimization, offsetting the impact of lower oil and gas prices and higher tax compared with fourth quarter of 2022. Claudio Descalzi, CEO of Eni, said the earnings made by his company were driven by resilient E&P results that featured a recovery in hydrocarbon production and very strong gas and LNG performance. Overall, most of the oil majors recorded a decrease in earnings in the first quarter of 2023 compared to the fourth quarter of 2022, citing lower oil and gas prices and higher taxes, among others. In Nigeria, the sales of solar products have risen by 450% from 2017 to 2022, according to a new report from a Renewable Energy Association highlighting the growing interest in embracing alternative power sources. The report by GOCLA, Lighting Global, a World Bank initiative, Efficiency for Access Coalition, and Branscott, a Dutch management consultancy firm, says Nigerian solar product sales rose over 1 million last year, the highest since 2016. The report said the second half of 2022 recorded the highest solar sales of all time, representing 78% of West African sales in that period. Nigeria again recorded particularly high sales volumes this reporting round, reaching 722,600 units in the second half of 2022. This is a 55% increase in the first half of 2022 and 86% increase compared to the second half of 2021. This was driven by an 82% increase in pay-go sales. 2021, this was driven by an 82% increase in pay-go sales, while cash sales grew by 13%. Bassi also said the surge in solar product sales is due to more favorable policies for the renewable energy sector in Nigeria since 2015 that allowed for more private sector involvement. Initiatives like Nigeria Electrification Program (NEP), implemented by the Rural Electrification Agency with funding from the World Bank and African Development Bank, seeking to provide electricity access through mini-grids and stand-alone off-grid solutions, have led to proliferation of appliances for productive users in off-grid communities. Other projects like the $75 million RBF facility for solar energy kits have played a key role in driving the rapid sales growth between 2019 and 2022, and the Solar Power Niger program (SPN) announced in December 2020, seeking to electrify 5 million households, serving about 25 million Nigerians through SHS and mini-grids under the Economic Sustainability Plan, also helped with the growth recorded. The report added that multi-light system sales increased by 7% and solar home system sales increased by 136% in the second half of last year. In addition, lantern sales decreased by 2% compared to the previous reporting round. According to GOCLA, Nigeria accounts for 75% of all appliances sales in West Africa. The Federal Airports Authority of Nigeria has ordered the immediate relocation of all aircraft stationed at the General Aviation Terminal of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja, ahead of the inauguration of the new government scheduled for May 29, 2023. FAAN said the removal of aircraft parked at the Abuja airport was necessary to enhance the safety of the airport during the forthcoming presidential inauguration. Many of the aircraft parked at GAT Terminal in Abuja are private jets belonging to wealthy Nigerians, firms, and airlines. The relocation directive was contained in a circular dated May 8, 2023, addressed to aircraft operators and signed by Regional Manager FAAN Kabir Mohammed. Reacting to the development is the former Managing Director of the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency and Chief Executive Officer of the Top Brass Aviation, Captain Roland Iyayi. He expressed concern that most of the aircraft parked at the GAT terminal at the Abuja airport is not serviceable. Saudi Aramco has reported net income of $31.88 billion in the first quarter of 2023, up 3.75% from earnings recorded in the fourth quarter of 2022. The oil giant said that the increase in quarterly net profit was due to lower income taxes and zakat, lower operating expenses, and higher financial and other revenues. The energy giant first quarter net income is more than three-quarters of the combined first quarter profit of $40.5 billion reported by five oil majors, BP and Shell in the UK, ExxonMobil and Chevron in the US, and Total Energies in France. However, Aramco's net income fell 19.25% year-on-year in the first quarter as the company reported profit of SRI 48.3 billion for the same quarter of 2022. Aramco had reported profits totaling 600.77 billion in 2022, allowing Saudi Arabia to record its first annual budget surplus in almost a decade. Those gains were helped by rising energy prices after Russia launched its war against Ukraine in February 2022, with sanctions restricting Moscow's oil and natural gas sales in Western market. Nasser also pointed out that oil and gas supplies are critical component as the world moves towards a sustainable future. He explained that Aramco is working hard to develop green energy solutions that will facilitate this transition. The CEO further noted that in the first quarter, Aramco reached agreements to expand its downstream business abroad, including investments in China and the completion of a $2.76 billion acquisition of voptvlive product business. It also noted that the downstream strategy is gaining momentum as Aramco leverages cutting-edge technologies to increase its liquid-to-chemical conversion capacity to meet anticipated petrochemical demand. In the first quarter of 2023, Aramco continued to demonstrate its track record of reliable operations with total hydrocarbon production of 12.8 million barrels per day. The statement also noted that crude used by Aramco's downstream operations accounts for 45% of the company's crude oil production. Meanwhile, Aramco also plans to introduce a quarterly performance-related dividend mechanism in addition to the base dividend it currently pays. According to the statement, Aramco intends these to be 50 to 70% of the group's annual free cash flow, net of the base dividend and other amounts, including external investments determined by the annual result. The statement added that the $19.5 billion dividend in the first quarter of 2023 will be paid in the second quarter. Higher dividends are expected to boost revenues for Saudi Arabia as it owns more than 90% of Saudi Aramco's shares. Aramco shareholders also approved the board's recommendation to increase the company's capital from 70 billion to 90 billion. Microsoft-owned LinkedIn has announced a plan to cut 716 jobs globally in the latest round of big tech layoffs. The layoffs would affect 3.5% of the company's 20,000-strong workforce. The new development comes months after Jumia announced plans to lay off 900 of its employees. In a message to the company's employees on Monday, LinkedIn chief executive Ryan Roslansky said the decision was aimed at streamlining operations and broadening responsibilities to make decisions more quickly. He noted that colleagues who are impacted by this announcement have all made invaluable contributions to the company. According to him, the company is making meaningful progress in creating economic opportunities for its members and customers and experiencing record engagement on the platform. While these decisions are essential for its business, Mr. Roslansky said the company's employees will be leaving LinkedIn for new opportunities. He added that benefits for employees outside the U.S. will align with employment laws and local practices in each country. LinkedIn is the latest technology company to lay off its employees in a new wave of massive layoffs in the tech industry, in which employees of Twitter, Facebook, Amazon, IT Group Salesforce, Microsoft, Google, eBay, PayPal, and Jumia have been affected. All right, we'll be taking you back to our first story where the Central Bank of Nigeria has threatened to penalize shipping companies exporting undocumented cargoes from the country. Godwin Emefiele, CBN governor, spoke at the RT200 Non-Oil Export Summit 2023 on Tuesday in Abuja. The summit is themed RT200 Challenges and Prospects. Now we're being joined by an economic analyst, Mr. Wole Ogundare. Mr. Wole, you are welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Mr. Wole, how have these cargoes been moving out in the first place, if I may ask?
Well, the hitherto before this CBN policy was sort of set up last year, people are traditionally just done business, albeit in a very low-key manner. What I say to it is, before now, exports outside of Nigeria has always been low. You know, Nigeria generally were an import-dependent economy. That's the kind of economy we run. So a lot of exports have usually been very, very low. You know, people have just found a way to do their businesses and export the little that they can export. So it's through the usual traditional channels, you know, of exporting. You get your export licenses, you know, you apply for it, you comply with all the rules of NEPC, and you export your stuff. It's pretty much straightforward. The point is, nothing has changed, you know, so far, except CBN wants to incentivize repatriation of dollars. So the process of exporting has always been the same. Nothing mainly has changed. The only thing they're trying to add now is to say, look, how can we incentivize dollars to be repatriated back into Nigeria? You know, that's how I'd like to address that.
Okay, is the CBN the only regulator, and why are we not hearing from others?
When you say CBN the only regulator, that's a funny question. You know, in Nigeria, when these policies come out, the number one mistake that you see a lot of the regulatory agencies making, in this case, the two people that I think are primarily in charge, CBN and NEPC, the two primary mistakes is usually around communication and communication. You know, and these things lead to a lot of the policies themselves failing. How many times, has any sort of communication come out to say that, look, this is what the policy is about? If you're having challenges, talk to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
interdepartmental agencies and stuff like that. So it tells you again that ability for these regulatory agencies to speak to each other and to work collaboratively to ensure that the overall objective, in this case, repatriating $200 billion in the next 3 to 5 years, that overall objective is kept, in full view. And, everybody understands what it's about and how to go about it. That is where the main challenge is: communication, communication. That's where the failure has been.
All right, but how do you classify this act? Is it financial or an economical crime?
You mean which of the issues now?
Exporting their cargoes without documentation.
Oh, that's both a financial and an economic crime. That's why you have the EFCC, economic crimes. It falls under the purview of both. Again, it's the thing going on across businesses. So because part of what I do, I consult for businesses. People will traditionally just want to circumvent, rules when they can. And you see, you must dial back and ask yourself that, why are people trying to circumvent this?
Yeah.
Why are they trying to circumvent this? If you find out the why, then you can understand that, okay, these are the things that I need to plug, as a government. These are the things that I need to plug to enable people, start to comply with these policies that we have set out.
All right, Mr. Wally, can you shed some light on the financial crime and economic crime? Just give us, the dimensions.
Okay, so from a financial perspective, what you're doing is you're shortchanging the government because you're not paying all the things that you're meant to pay. It's as simple as that. Before you can sort of export out of Nigeria, there's certain, there are a few things that you need to do quite clearly. You must register, with the Export Promotion Agency. You must get a license. You must have like an export destination verification as well. So the things that you're taking to whatever country it is, they must be verified, at source to say that, look, these things can actually be exported into our country. They meet the required minimum standards, all of that. There are all sorts of standards set. Now, if you circumvent that, in addition to paying the taxes, that's financial. On the economic side, again, you must ask yourself, why was this policy set up? So the policy was set up to sort of try and ensure that we have stable and forex, inflows, and sort of increase the contribution of non-oil exports, to economic growth, GDP, and stuff like that, and the companies that want to get into export. So export-oriented companies. So all of those things are trying to happen on the economic side. You're circumventing it, and then the taxes that you're failing to pay the government, you're also circumventing that. So, there goes the various crimes that people are committing.
All right. Can you tell us about the extent of risk this poses to national security?
National security, I won't go that far, that they pose, a major risk to the national security. What I'd say is that they're shortchanging the government, from an income side of things. So all of the taxes, like I said, all of the taxes they're meant to pay, they're not paying it. And then economic side, some of the things that the government is trying to do to ensure that the economy is stable. You must understand it. To ensure we have a stable economy, they're also sort of circumventing those. So it's got nothing to do with national security. It's just got to do with a lot of people circumventing laid down laws, and looking for shortcuts. Put it that way.
All right. Finally, how do you quantify the loss in the financial term? In a financial term.
That would be very difficult to quantify, until we know the actual number of people circumventing these laws before we can begin to try and quantify exactly the volume of losses that we've made. You'll notice even when the CBN governor was talking a few days ago, he only talked increase from X to Y. And they're the ones in the best position. Look, we feel that X number of people in all these shipping companies in collusion with those who are exporting, are circumventing the policies that we've put down. And that gives you, a way to estimate the volume of losses the country is experiencing.
All right. So why did the CBN warn us without giving us an amount that has been lost already? Just warning us.
Yeah, good question. That's a good question. The challenge is, I don't think they even know. You see, one of the problems in Nigeria with exporting is we haven't yet standardized, how we export. So even though there are all these laid down laws and procedures, there's still people trying to export a lot of things outside of a country, and they're hitting all sorts of roadblocks, in the process. You see people hiding stuff in various places to export them. You'll see some trying to export some semi-perishable items, for instance, yam. We produce one of the best yams in the world, yam tuber. You see a lot of it getting, rotting at the ports because they're trying to comply with the laws. You see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
So you'll see some guys say, look, instead of complying and wasting my time, let me look for a shortcut to get my yams on the sea and get it out of here. That is why it's difficult to actually quantify the losses, because a lot of the losses, in-country losses, where yams and all these perishable things are being wasted, and then there's a second level of losses that the government also feels you're not paying me enough tax, you're trying to get things out of the country. It's currently not as structured as it should be. That's the honest truth. And until we're able to do that with the right level of infrastructure across our ports, we will still continue to struggle, and people will continue to look for ways to circumvent the laid down laws.
All right. Mr. Wole Ogundare, thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Okay, and that's a wrap on VOP Business. I am Kayla Abraham. Thanks for watching.